Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning. Welcome to the Marintec Innovation Webinar Series, Chapter 1, Extension. I am Michael Duck, a Director of Marintec China and Executive Vice President Asia at Informa Markets, based in Hong Kong. I am very pleased to have been involved with this exhibition held biennially in Shanghai since 1994. This webinar today is the first in the series of 4 that will hopefully give you insight into some of the key technology initiatives in the maritime world today. But with the overwhelming response to the first chapter, Autonomous Ships Overview, we received many requests on learning more. Thus, we invited Dr. Martin Stopford once again with the same guest speaker, Mr. Li Xin, Director of Smart Ship Department, SSC, Shanghai Merchant Ship Design and Research Institute, SDARI, to be with us today. Unfortunately, Mr. Chris Chung, the Director of Digital Innovation and Strategic Projects of Wärtsilä Acceleration Center, for personal reasons, could not join the webinar at the last moment. We welcome him back again. He sends his best wishes to everybody. The title of today's webinar is The Fourth Industrial Revolution at Sea, Autonomous Ships Overview Extension. To give this paper, it gives me, again, very great pleasure to welcome back today, Dr. Martin Stopford, an old friend of Marintec China. His books and academic papers have been used by the maritime industry for decades now, and he is also the non-executive president of Clarkson Research Services. Welcome, Dr. Martin.
Well, good morning or good evening, and thank you all for joining us. Could I just ask you a question, Michael? Are we going to go straight into the questions, or are you expecting me to make some sort of introductory comment?
You're always very welcome to make introductory comments. I think maybe it would be worthwhile just for a couple of minutes on your reflections on the first webinar that we had, and then I'll go straight into the questions after that.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and good evening to Mr. Li Xin. How nice to see you. I'm very pleased that you're back here. Well, I thought we're all in uncharted territory here, and I found the last session was very good. I mean, one of the things that was so good about it was that when you do a normal seminar or a conference, as we've done many at Marintec, you see a few people afterwards, but you don't get a very strong sense of questions. And so I think that this, when the organizers collected a list of about 50 or 60 questions that had been posted, which we didn't have time to discuss at all, and I would say that I found looking through them was really interesting because it helps to understand where the areas of focus are. It was a very international audience, a lot of people from China, but also people from around the world in many different sectors of industry. And so I think that this process, this is something that we're finding one of the benefits of doing these webinars and using these little written questions, is that it does give those of us involved in preparing the lectures and doing the other parts of the seminar a chance to relate much more clearly to what factors that are in the minds of the audience. And so I'd say, Michael, that really is excellent. I mean, what happened out of this was that we're not going to be able to discuss all the questions, but we've selected about 10, and I guess, should I now pass that on to you, Michael?
Yes, let me just take it to the next stage. For everybody there, and I can see people coming in from as far away as South Africa and Japan. And I know from last time we had people also from Brazil on this webinar, so a wonderful geographic reach. We'll again have 40 minutes on discussion of the questions from this chapter 1. And then the final 20 minutes will also take more questions from the audience. And if you do have questions, please submit to the Q&A box on your screen. And I see already some people are using that. So here we go. Dr. Martin, the first question is from Peter Moller of Marcod. Which sectors do you foresee that the maritime sector can learn from? Or are we on a whole new ground?
Well, I mean, I thought this was a great question to start with because to begin with, I thought we can learn a lot from other industries, and in a way we can. You know, the car industry, the logistics sectors, UPS and so forth. But the more I've looked at this, the more you come to realize that shipping is a very, very different business. And I would say, I'm sure Li Xin has some views about this too, but because he's right in the heart of it. But, you know, doing the sorts of things for ships which you've done for cars is a very big challenge, because you know, the car industry produces 100 million cars a year globally and has enormous research departments doing nothing but developing prototype equipment, material, working. They have a stronghold with their equipment suppliers, and they sell a reasonably standardized product. Whereas in shipping, just to make the comparison, we do about 2,000 ships a year. That's the bigger ones, you know, not counting the little boats. And there are, within those, there's 40 or 50 different types. So anybody engaged in trying to engineer ships for the new technology, I think there has to be a different and a new approach which is appropriate to shipping. I mean, that's my feeling. I don't know, Mr. Lee, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, Martin, you are right. So actually, so for the shipping industry, I would say it's a branch, is a big branch industry in the global industry, like you mentioned, the cars, aviations. So it depends. In my opinion, if I would say the I4 technology is mature and proven in other industries like aviation, like automobile industries. But in the other hand, so actually we are on the new ground, because the maritime industry is unique and is part of logistic chain, and is conservative because the cost is high, the risk is high when the ship is in a failure or in an accident. So in this point, the management, the business mode, the real product or engineering process is unique. In this point is a totally new ground, because the only thing we can do is build our maritime house by ourselves. Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Okay.
Very good. Well, I think a lot of these topics are going to come up later questions. So shall we
we'll move on to the next question, and this is for you, Mr. Lee. This is from Lodewijk Kelwelan of Patimura University. I agree with Mr. Li Xin's opinion that maritime technology goes slowly behind other modal revolutions in the digital era. In your opinion, what strategy should be created to shipping companies to invest in new technologies?
Yeah, I think this is also a good question, because we have to think about how we do the things regarding I4 or autonomous ship. In my opinion, there is one philosophy or principle that is make everything digital, like the ships. You know, the ships is the biggest assets for the ship owners, for the shipping companies, and also the management, not only on ship but also on shore, and every decisions, decisions, operation decisions on board, and the management decisions on shore, and so on. So now maritime industry have so many things which are not clear to ship management and operation. We don't know exactly when the engine will down or the ship will be in an accident. So we have to make those things clear to squeeze the cost and lower the risks. So far, the digital technology is mature and proven in other industries, such as aviations. So I think it will work in maritime industry. When everything is digital, the ship company will be digital, and the assets will be digital. And of course, the shipping companies still run the literal assets and ship in the ocean, but we manage those ship in digital, in the cyberspace, to run the digital assets. So I think this is the future for the shipping company. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Martin.
Well, I agree with everything that Mr. Lee said. I think perhaps what I would add, speaking from my perspective, is that it seems to me it's very hard to make the economics work here. I mean, basically, as you so rightly said in the last answer to the last question, the industry is very conservative, and in many ways, rightly so, because the ship owner is carrying the whole risk for the new. If they come to you and order the ship, they've got to live with that ship, and therefore I think it's important for developing the new technology that we get the cargo interests more closely involved. This has happened in the past, and if we go back to the 50s and 60s, the cargo interests were very closely involved in developing the big ships, the new ships, and the new shipbuilding construction techniques in those days. And I think that because of the cost, we can't leave this just to the ship owners, and we do need to look to the cargo owners to see the value of what they're going to get out of it and to become involved in some way, whether it's through time charters, whether it's through ordering ships themselves. You know, I would say that's important.
Okay, thank you. Question 3. Joshua Lee of Hyundai Welding. How do you think about the relation between I4 at sea and satellite network? Autonomous ship requires high network performance by satellite. Do you think that the present technology of satellite is enough to support autonomous ships? Dr. Martin.
Well, thanks. Another very good question. In fact, I spent the morning trying to get through to Inmarsat to just get an update on where they are with Fleet Express and so forth, but I didn't succeed. But I think that on the autonomous, I don't know whether the questioner really was meaning truly autonomous ships, but I would regard fully autonomous ships as a bit of a fringe and a small sector of the market. They're not the big shipbuilding market going forward, at least for the next 20 years. For that reason, I think that the idea that you would be running I think it's unlikely we'll get a satellite system that is reliable enough to deep sea cargo ships in their entirety. But that doesn't mean that lots of also bringing in the various different activities, the cargo handling, ballast and trim, the mooring, the main propulsion systems. There's lots of areas where we can tighten up the onboard organization and control of the ships using digital information and automation algorithms. But I don't think that the I-4 is likely to be possible in a fully autonomous way. I think that the analogy I would see here is a very good analogy with motor racing. You know, Formula One racing cars. They have enormous amounts of information about the car, which they're monitoring continuously during the race. But of course, you wouldn't dream of being without the driver. They haven't got to that stage yet. But it does raise some interesting questions. That one of the problems that they have when they're monitoring the car is that they do lose contact with the car. I mean, if you've got a Formula One car going around the track, sometimes the car goes behind trees and they are getting no information from the car for maybe, you know, quite a few seconds. And in that situation, there's some quite complicated algorithms that they've developed to restore the data set once the car reappears again. And I think this is the technology for compensating with the loss of satellite communication with the ship, I think is a very interesting area and one that does deserve quite a bit of attention.
Okay, thank you. Interesting questions there also for pilotless aircraft as well. Mr. Li Xin.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, yeah. So I totally agree with Martin about the autonomous and the scenario or circumstances when the ship is sailing. So actually there is first, I'm an engineer. I talk about these things from point of view, engineering point of view. So there is one thing is there is no standard or common sense for level of autonomy in maritime industry. So far, in IMO has a definition for the degree of autonomy. There were 4 degrees. So I think it depends. It depends on the sailing, the scenarios. For example, when the ship is sailing at the coastal area. So I think the ship, the satellite, the capacity of satellite will be not an issue, because we can use the 4G or 5G signal network to control and monitoring the vessel. And when the vessel sailing cross oceans, cross continents, so I think there must be a crew on board to control and save the vessel when there is a emergency. So I think it depends on the scenario and the circumstances. And of course, there is one thing for sure: so far the satellites, the communication, they have the shortcuts for the stability of communications, for the quality of communications. So this is the technology. So when the new technology comes out, so maybe this is not the question. So for the autonomous vessel, there is a technical issue and a management issue. So there is one question that is there important or essential for there is unmanned on board? So I think this is maybe this is for the management. This is more important. Yeah, that's all. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Very interesting answer there. The next question for you, Mr. Li, is from our old friend Hauke Schlegel of VDMA Marine Equipment and Systems in Germany. Do you consider the developing ship automation standard MTP, module type package, from the process industry as a possible solution for this challenge?
Yeah, so in my opinion, the standard MTP module type package is it could be a possible solution for the I4 revolution or challenge, because all the ideas, autonomous or the decision making support for the vessel, it will proceed by all the like automation system or smart system on board. So so far there is a lot of vendors like Wärtsilä, like the Kongsberg, like ABB, all those vendors, advanced vendors, they are developing their own systems. And there is one thing that in many circumstances or scenarios, they have to connect it together. For example, the Kongsberg system connect to the ABB system. So it could be a how do we figure out the connections, the connection issues or the protocol issues. So I think for the module type, the package maybe the possible solutions. Yeah, that's all. Yeah. Dr.
Martin.
Yeah, I'd just like to carry on really with what Mr. Lee said. I think that the idea of, I can understand why the suppliers are trying to put forward proprietary systems that control everything. But I think the problem with this is that you end up with such big systems. It's an awful lot for one company to focus on. And I do like the idea of having some competition on the systems for particular areas like navigation or whatever it is. And if you're going to do that, you do need, as Mr. Lee said, you need some sort of standard communication protocols on board the ship. And I think the idea of process control, which MTP is a good example, is absolutely the way to go. I mean, this is too important to allow. I mean, the engine manufacturers have managed to sort of, we only have 2 brands of engines, and they've managed perfectly well with the development of the engines by 2 or 3 different licensees. But I think this is a very different business. And I don't think that the maritime industry can afford to leave it all to the suppliers. I think you do need, I mean, if you look at chemical plants on shore, these are much more complex than ships. And they are all run by process control systems. So and to do that, you need some protocols for communication as well, the sort of canvas type of thing. So I would say, and incidentally, I did notice when I looked on VDMA's website this morning, they actually have a specialist system looking at these process controls for, they have a committee looking at maritime process controls. So obviously this was a question with a little bit of a motive behind it, right?
Very good. On to the next one, Dr. Martin Few from Zoe of Shanghai Society of Naval Architects and Marine Engineers. Suppose I am a venture investor. How can you persuade me to invest on an autonomous vessel? What's the benefit and the risk?
Well, I think we've covered the autonomous ship position pretty well here, and I think we both agree that deep sea, it's not very viable, but there are projects. And I think the answer to this question is the way you convince a venture capital investor is the way you always convince a venture capital investor. You get a project, you develop some financials, and you show them that they're going to make a good profit. And I think if you take certain niche cases, I mean, a good example running at the moment is the Yara autonomous 100 TEU autonomous ship that they are building in Italy to take 100 containers from a chemical plant in one fjord in Norway to the foreign terminal in another fjord. It's a short voyage, but in this case, the 100 TEU ship, which is intended eventually to be autonomous, will save 40,000 truck journeys a year, which is, you know, when you run the numbers, if they work, then that's a great project. And I think that picking up on Mr. Lee's points about autonomous ships, if you can find the projects, then let's do them, because this is where, you know, it gives you a chance to put your new technology in the shop window and make money out of it. But I think, you know, these venture capitalists, they want 20% a year profit. You know, this is not like shipping.
Mr. Lee, what do you say to that?
Yeah, Dr. Martin is right. So for the autonomous, so whatever autonomous or another, for example, maybe 50 years ago, there may be the new type or a novel technology with full of, how to say, a ship full of novel technology comes out. So it's how to say, which kind of the technology or autonomous ship, it depends the how to say, the management and the scenarios. And every day the management of shipping company, they calculate the figures. They are how to say, they are figure out how to make profit in such a market, shipping market. So they are how to say, they are worried about the real behavior of the fleet. So they are trying to utilize the new technology to improve the ability of to making profit. So autonomous vessel now is a future solution. In my opinion, still a future solution. So I think it will depends the scenario and the management for the shipping company. Yeah.
Thank you. That's a great answer then. The next question, Mr. Lee, from Gun Kim of DMVGL. How do you think the emerging autonomous remote control vessel would change the business structure in shipbuilding?
It's a very interesting and good question. So we are talking about a lot of things about the shipping company, and we have to think about the autonomous ship will be built by the shipyards. So how the novel autonomous ships comes out. So what can the shipyards get from this I4 revolution? So in my opinion, it depends for the shipbuilding, the business mode still remains as usual as we are, but the technologies we are looking at, for example, for the Volkswagen or the Mercedes, the automobile factories, they are using a lot of digital or automation technology to improve the manufacturing efficiency, to reduce the manufacturing costs. So the shipyards can do the same thing, because they have to how to say, to put shipyard into this digital chain. Otherwise, they will be isolated. At that time, the business mode and the product will be isolated too. So I think this is the impact for the shipyards. Yeah.
Dr. Martin?
Yes, I think this is probably the biggest question you can ask at the moment. You know, how do you do it in a shipyard? Life in shipbuilding is not easy. It seems to me that one of the issues that might be an issue is that when the current shipbuilding technology was developed 20 or 30 years ago, the sort of zone outfitting, material control systems, that was all what happened very consciously. If you look back at what the people who developed that system very consciously pushed the functional systems on the ship into the background and focused very much on the palletization of zones, so that you could produce these whole block construction pre-outfitted blocks much more efficiently at minimum man hours. In other words, we were in a commodity market where the aim was to get the man hours as low as you possibly could. And they didn't really pay much attention to the functional systems. You know, you put in any pump as long as it was cheap and the outlet, inlet and outlet were in the right place, you know. And I think that perhaps one of the things that might happen here is that you start to have to focus much more on the integration of the functional areas, which is very difficult in some cases, things like mooring systems, you know. And so I would say, I don't know what Mr. Lee thinks about this, but I would say there is some room here for bringing the functional system design and production much more to the forefront than it has been in the past.
Mr. Lee, do you want to respond to that briefly?
Yeah. So Dr. Martin is right, but I want to put on an additional ideas for the business structure for the shipyards, because the shipyard builds build the autonomous vessel. They can utilize the data, and of course get the permission from the owner first. They can utilize the data to optimize the new designs, the building solutions, and of course they can make a new, for example, the repairing business, because the vessel is building here, and you can repair the vessel in the future because you know the vessel very well, and you can extend the shipyard's business to the whole life cycle of the ship. Yeah, that's all. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. The next question's for Dr. Martin. This is from Bhupesh Tater of GTTT, brackets MBI. Peak demand estimated by you is around the year 2038, but it starts to pick up at about 2026. Now, shipyards and designers can certainly use the I-4 technology by then. A, will the industry be able to meet the GHG requirements of the IMO? And if not, does the curve shift substantially to the rig HT by, say, about 5 to 10 years for the shipyards to meet the demand? And then B, if A does result in a shift, how do you see the catch-up game impacting the trade due to reduced tonnage and a possible catch-22 situation?
That was a very long question, Michael.
Indeed.
It's interesting, though, because it ties in exactly with where we've just come from with Mr. Lee's comments about the maintenance of the fleet subsequent to build. But let me add another factor. I mean, what this question seems to me to be about is the fact that we don't actually know when we're going to replace the existing fleet. We've got this enormous fleet of ships, 2 billion tons of ships, which were mostly built within the last 12 years. About 2/3 of them were built in the last 10 or 12 years. And the question is, what's their life going to be? Are they going to become obsolete, or are they going to be replaced early? Or will we actually find, as has happened in the past, that they live on to a ripe old age? And I think one of the issues here, which is very central to that timing of replacement, is the retrofitting. I mean, we've come out of an era where you don't really retrofit ships very much. People buy them and they don't, you know, they repair them, but they don't put new technology on board. Whereas if you go back to the 19th century, when they had steam engines were developing all the time, and you would change the engine 2 or 3 times during the life of the ship, and no one would think twice about it. And one of the things that McKinsey says about the I-4 revolution is that it's not really so much about replacing the assets. It's about the technology and information you have for using the assets. And so the sort of follow-on question to Mr. Xi's point is, can you actually retrofit the existing fleet to give it an extra lease of life by putting a lot of this technology into the ships that you're developing for the new buildings? But you have the new navigation set. Maybe you come up with some very clever system of mooring, and you refit the mooring system, that sort of thing. I mean, do you see what I'm saying here, Mr. Lee?
Yeah, Martin, you're right. Because nowadays the I would say the ship, so actually maybe we will probably be facing a small peak of retrofit because the EEDI pressure or EEXI pressure. Because before 2008 there was a lot of high-speed vessel have been built. So nowadays the EEDI, EEXI has a limitation to those vessels, and then they are thinking about, for example, change the bow area, the bow part, change the bow and change the propeller, and so put on a energy saving like a duct, fan duct on the vessel. So this is the how to say, a solution and a response to the greenhouse emission control. So there is a one how to say, this is one solution so far for the owner they can for the owner they can, I would say, they can choose so far, because the market is so, how to say, we are in the deep bottom. So for nowadays we are saying we are talking about maybe in the future there is a peak, but now we are in the deep bottom. So we are before we get that peak, and then how we get there. So they were I-4 revolution or retrofit. So this is the challenge for the shipping company and also for every players in this community. So yeah, that's all. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Great answers for a long question, but a very important question indeed. I have a few more questions, a little bit shorter, but I'm concerned a little bit about time, because we've got some really great questions coming in on the Q&A. Please keep them coming in. Don't forget the Q&A box which to put your questions. So for Mr. Lee, the next question is from Shu Shumin of Estari. What is the difference between the European cruise market and the Chinese cruise market? And what is the future growth point of the cruise market? My goodness.
Yeah, and of course.
What a question.
You know the Xu Xumin is my colleague.
That's why I gave you the difficult one.
It's very interesting. It's very interesting. So actually we are sometimes Xu Xumin is a lady full of how to say experience for ship design. And sometimes we are talking about the cruise vessels, the cruise industries. So actually this is one question sometimes we are talking about. We argue or discuss together, because the cruise, in my opinion, this is maybe Dr. Martin has a better answer, but in my opinion, the cruise is a frontier for people. It's a kind of lifestyle, and is is a way of people get relaxed. So because the European cruise, the passenger is Europeans, and in China, the Chinese cruise market, most of the passengers are Chinese. So it's a different cultural background and a different, how to say, the habits of consumptions. So I think, for example, maybe for the Europeans, they are in the cruise. They will judge the cruise is good or not. It will depends the service on the cruise ship, the cruise, the foods and the service and the theaters. And for the Chinese, the cruise market, the people are talking about what can how to say, on this cruise vessel I can get to another country or another sightseeing site. They can express and they can see. So it's a different habit. So maybe Dr. Martin has a better answer.
Okay, I'd like to just ask also, Dr. Martin, obviously the pandemic has caused havoc in the cruise industry in these past 6 months, and we also have, of course, a first more than 100,000 ton cruise ship being built in Weigao. Where do you see the industry at the moment and the possibility for the ships still to be built?
Well, I guess the position at the moment is lockdown. I mean, it's a tough time, and in fact, hopefully on the next chapter we're going to have someone from the cruise industry, yes. Because the point that Mr. Lee's making is very true. This is the high-tech end of the business, and it's quite different from other parts of shipbuilding, not just in terms of the passengers, but as in terms of shipbuilding. You've got different steel work, you've got different approach to fabrication, you've got enormous quantities of subcontracting. I mean, it's a very different business. And I guess my answer, Mr. Lee, is much the same as yours. I would have thought Europe is a very mature economy. People want a good time on board the ship, and they like to go ashore, but it's not really why they go. Whereas, as I'd understood it, people like to go shopping in Tokyo or Seoul or somewhere like that. And we were always told actually that you like to gamble on the ships, but I don't know if that's true or not.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Martin, the next question's from Alan Chang of BEN. Who is from Brazil, and our panelists had already spoken about the information integration with ports. My question is how this will happen, especially when it comes to port community systems.
Well, this going back to where we started, this whole thing is a voyage of discovery. I mean, the more you get into it, the more you discover the unique characteristics of shipping. I think the ports area is a very, very difficult one. 10 years ago, started to develop.
I'm sorry, Dr. Martin, we have lost contact with you. Mr. Lee, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Why don't you carry on with the question, and then we'll try and get Dr. Martin back. Unfortunately, we seem to have lost him for a moment.
Yeah. So this question is a very good question, because it's talking about the how to say, the connections, the data connections, the information connections. Because in the industry, the ship is the key, but there is a lot of, I would say, lots of players around the ship. Port is one major, how to say, one major elements. So because the ship, the cargo and the supplies will be get from the ports, and of course there was a lot of inspections from the ports. So I think the data get to the port, and the ports get emerged to the whole digital, how to say, ecosystem. They are doing now. So actually they are doing now because the port wants to improve the services. So also use the same technology, the digital solution. So I think it's happening now. It's happening now.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. Let's go on to the next question then. Is from Emily Gao Chan, Diesel Engine Journal. What will be the smart engine for the next decade?
So actually for the next decades, for engines, I think the first thing is reliability and the performance. Is as usual as we are as now, and then the second point is improve the I would say the degree of digitalization or automation to reduce the cost of the ship operation, and improve the the management for the crews. So I think maybe this is the future for the engines. One is improve the reliability and the performance. Another is digitalization, to get very close connection with crews and management.
Okay, thank you very much. We're still trying to bring Dr. Martin back onto our screens. It's a long way between here and London, so
yeah.
somewhere in the middle. We'll try and get him back as soon as we can. But obviously we've got a good line with you, so we'll still keep going. The next question we have is from Antonio Garcia. Do you contemplate a problem in managers recruiting a very different crew generation for this new I4 ship generation?
So actually, this is a very good question, because in I4 revolution, we are talking a lot of things about the management, the ship, the autonomous ship, digital ship. There was one key is all those things has to be done by crews. So the skills of management people and the crew on board. So there will be a new challenge in training and how to say employment to guarantee those digital assets, and the digital, how to say, the digital management can make a great efforts. So I think this is a common issue to the whole industry. For example, for the education, for the training, for our, how to say, for nowadays, for in the shipyards and the design house and the class, every people are facing the same thing. How do we deal with the I4 revolution? How do we deal with the new mode of designs, building and inspections, especially for the class? So I think this is common challenge for every player in this community. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Dr. Stafford, great to see you back again. Thank you for coming back so quickly. We've gone through a couple of questions. Just the last one here to perhaps you'd like to also comment on what Mr. Lee was commenting on from Antonio Garcia in regards to, do you see or contemplate any problems in managers recruiting a different crew generation for the new I4 ship generation?
I have a feeling that I'm going to, from what I caught of your comments, Mr. Lee, I think we're going to agree again. This
Okay.
is, you know, the shipping industry has had a very distinctive personnel structure for about 5,000 years, you know, and it's worked very well, and it was necessary because you couldn't communicate with the ships. The master had to be in total control. I think, but the fact is that if you've got if you've got a bulk shipping company with 20 ships, you've probably got 200 or 200 people in the office on the ships, and probably only maybe 20 people in the office ashore. So, you know, you need to get the best value out of the people on the ships, and you need to be developing the shore-based systems so that you can do them. You know, you can run the two in parallel, and there's lots of evidence, I think, now that the new digital systems are going to make it possible for people to work as teams across the business, say on things like navigation and voyage planning and you know, lots of complex areas. And I think that will be a very good thing, because it'll create some much better jobs in shipping, you know, rather than just the guys on the ship being, you know, a separate group. They will become part of the overall team. I hope that'll happen.
Okay, thank you.
But
so I'm going to go now on to the questions we have from the very international audience here for the last 15 minutes. The first question is to you, Dr. Martin, from Mohammed Zaitoun. The industry is going towards dramatic change, and the need for good plans for environmental compliance for the coming years. And despite of that, the finance, banks, lenders are still following a very old traditional shipping finance model, only looking for a cheap price ship, low specification, are not keen on environmental compliance technologies, which lowering the OPEX costs as well as making good earnings. How can we change the mentality of the shipping finance firms?
Well, you can't really blame the banks for wanting to get their money back, you know. I mean, it's a luxury you have, and unfortunately, you know, whilst it's not so easy to place money nowadays, there are lots of other places you can put your money besides shipping. And so I think it's a two-way, from my point of view, it's a two-way street. I mean, the bankers, and we discussed this slightly earlier, the bankers have to perhaps accept and recognize the new technology. And there are things like the Poseidon principle which are trying to do that. But the industry has to come up with a way of making the new ships bankable. I mean, the ships that Mr. Lee's organization are designing, they're not going to get anywhere if you can't bank them. And I think that this goes back to my early comment that we do need to bring the cargo back in, because when you look at this technology, it's new technology, it's not cheap, it's quite difficult because it produces benefits that don't come out in the normal management accounts, you know. I mean, basically, the classic case is the condition-based maintenance. If you don't put condition-based maintenance in, your ship breaks down in the middle of the Pacific and it costs you $150,000. If you spend lots of money on condition-based maintenance and it goes into your accounts, the ship doesn't break down. But then if the ship doesn't break down, nothing goes into the accounts. There's no revenue goes in. So all you're left with is this big overhead of the condition-based maintenance. And I think this comes down to the fact that perhaps of all the priorities on the information management on the ship, the most important of all is getting information for decision makers at every level about the performance of the ships, real performance, which will enable people to see the benefits that they're getting from the I4 technology, and not just, you know, it's not just theoretical, that the ships are delivering more cargo in the year, and day by day they are producing less carbon, they are turning around quicker in ports, all these things. We need to get much, much better at that sort of monitoring and reporting, which of course takes us back to the shipbuilders, Mr. Lee, doesn't it? You know.
Good, thank you very much. Perhaps if I'd like to just move on to another question that will give everybody a flavour of the different questions we're getting. Mr. Lee, perhaps you'd like to answer this one here. The question is from Li Shanjiang. How will the corona COVID-19 virus influence on any ship design and shipbuilding in the future?
Yeah, this is how to say, this is a very brand new question in terms of the pandemic in the world. So we are facing the, especially for the passenger ships, we are talking about the biosafe, because the biosafe will consider the virus control, disease control, and the environment control. So actually in the I would say in the emergency of biosafe. So the ship will be every guest room will be a isolated room to get the quarantine standard. So it will be a totally different design, because we are building a hospital ship for every passenger ship. So this is a different ideas. As I know, a lot of many class like ARENA, like CCS, and probably the DMVGL, they are doing the same research for the passenger ship, for the notation. So I think not only the passenger ship, for the normal cargo merchant ship, we still have more than 20 crews on board. If there is a disease, get very high infection capabilities for the disease. So how do we control the disease on board, and how do we keep the assets available and the cargo is safe? This is a common challenge for every players. Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Martin, if I may, the next question I have here is from somebody from COMSA, the Korea Maritime Transportation Safety Authority. And your lecture showed that the transformation by digitalization and decarbonization has a substantial impact on various stakeholders in the shipping industry. We have several questions here, but I'll give you one of them here. Do you think there will be a change in governance due to the new wave of technology? I think that there should be a close collaboration amongst various actors to make this transformation successful. What could be the role of a public organization under this context? And should it be actively involved in formulating a regulation framework?
Okay, so we're talking here about some sort of organization responsible for governance on the of shipping companies, which it's a great question, because we've been through a period in the last 30 or 40 years where shipping started off, if you go back to the early 70s, as a rather respectable business which had been run by corporates, you know, the sort of people like Blue Funnel Line, or by cargo owners, Shell, BP, people like that were deeply involved in moving oil, and the big steel companies were deeply involved in moving steel, and ships were well maintained, and most of them were on time charter. It was a different world. And then in the 70s, after the oil crisis, we moved into this market where the whole focus was on cutting the costs and minimizing the cost of the new ship and minimizing the operating costs. And that sort of hit rock bottom in the 80s, when I think, you know, it's fair to say there was no governance at all. And I remember one BBC a commentator describing ship owners as pirates in blazers, actually, I think was the name he used. And since then, we have stayed in this environment which focuses very much on minimizing costs. That's driven the shipbuilders, it's driven the shipping companies who have, you know, only 1 or 2 people in the office for every ship at sea. You know, I'm going on about this a bit, but I do feel that the questioner is absolutely right, that as we move into this new era, which is being driven partly by environmental concerns as well, which is something that you know, means that we're going to be under much more scrutiny. I do think that governance will come back in, but I think it will only come back in if there is the money to do it. And if we carry on operating through this sort of spot market where you put your VLCC into the market and you take what you can get up in the Arabian Gulf, you know, which is sometimes barely enough to pay the operating expenses, it's very difficult to square that with a governance system. So I think we need the charterers to come back in, the big cargo owners, accept the need for investment, both to improve performance, but also to reduce carbon, and to be prepared to put their money on the table a little bit so that you can start to get respectable ship owners, can start to get term employment, which they can take to their bankers, going back to the previous question, and which they can also really use to build the management and the staff structures that they need to run the sort of the more high quality I4 business that we're looking at in future, you know. So I think whether that will be, whether a public organization to do that is right, I don't know. I wouldn't.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Mr. Lee, I have an interesting question here from Mohammed Saim, who is an international expert on maritime health. He says, I believe that the cruise industry will be the first to embrace more digital solutions already in use in airlines and hospitality industries, like hotels, due to the demand of passengers. I think some of this is covered by what you said earlier, but anything else you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, and I think for the cruise vessels nowadays, how to say, the digital service and technology have been already available on the existing cruise ship now. When we get to the get to Carnival cruise, we can get very good time due to the very good hotel service. We can order the dinner, we can order any service or shopping on your cell phone and all the devices on your guest room. So it depends. For the cruise vessels go to the I4, I think this is different directions. One is to improve the improve the service, make the passenger have a good time on board. Another is the digital maintenance and the management. This is all about the shipping company, the management. How, for example, a cruise vessel will have 100,000 a day for the management and the maintenance costs, including the oil and everything. So how do we reduce the cost? We can use the digital way to get there. So that is a different directions, and I think there is much more space to improve, especially in the cruise ship.
Thank you very much. That's a great answer. So we have the last question. We have lots of questions coming in, but I just want to put one here to Dr. Martin from somebody from Russia. Now, I speak a little Greek, so I can say his first name, but I can't say his second name. It's from Vasily, where it says issues, technical issues. But what are the innovations which are independent from declared issues? Autonomous ships. It is nice, but the amount of world population is 7.6 billion, and even more people, and the quantity is still increasing. Comments, Dr. Martin?
Well, I guess there's not going to be many jobs on autonomous ships, that's for sure. But funnily enough, it was interesting. I just happened to hear on the radio that they are the powers that be are revising down the population estimates, and they're now looking at a relatively lower population growth in the years ahead, with the exception of Africa. So, but I think this question of perhaps one possible spin on the autonomous ships. It's very difficult to make sense of autonomous ships in the deep sea trades. It's not a great part of their expenses, and if you develop the organization structures in the way that we've been discussing, the people on the ship will be busy. They won't be, they won't be in their cabin doing paperwork all the time, because that would all be taken care of by the autonomous systems or people on shore who can do it much better. But I do think that that maybe the short sea, again, picking up, I think now I remember, Mr. Lee, you mentioned this earlier, the short sea shipping is much more complex than deep sea shipping, many more port calls, a lot more maneuvering, and generally the ships are operating in a much more well-defined area with much better digital services. And, you can see maybe that, I mean, Amazon delivering parcels by drones is a bit of a gimmick, but you might find that you develop, that with a bit of effort, you can develop short sea ships which can provide a really good service, say for distributing containers, with relatively little crew, and be much more, as a result, be much more reliable, much more accurate than the sort of services that people are running today, which you need. And so I think I would see little to zero crew as more likely in the short sea distribution trades. It's sort of pick up on Amazon and all that stuff.
Well, thank you for your openness and answering, as always. I'm afraid our time is up, and it was a fascinating hour, over 1 hour, and I'm sure you will all agree with me. And thank you to this panel. I'm sure the audience will all join me in thanking Dr. Martin Stopford and Mr. Li Xin for an excellent presentation. I do hope, as I said in the beginning, that you found today's webinar most insightful. Today's session has been recorded, and it will be available next week, I think on Monday, on the Marintec China 2021 website. The Marintec Innovation Webinar Chapter 2, Zero Carbon Emission, will be live on the 23rd of July at 7 p.m. China, Beijing, Hong Kong time. Dr. Martin Stopford will be, again, the keynote speaker, again with a panel from Carnival Cruise, E5 Lab, and the China Classification Society. It will be fascinating. Please join us again, and I look forward to seeing you next week at the Marintec Innovation Webinar. Thank you all for joining us today. May you all stay safe and healthy, and speak to you again soon. Goodbye, and thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Mr. Lee.
Bye-bye, Martin. Bye-bye. Hope to see you again.
Bye-bye, Martin. Bye-bye,
Yes,
Lee.
indeed.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Michael.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.